Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. Indeed, my name is Mikko, and I am a global cybersecurity expert. So, how do you become an expert? It's easy. You simply pick a field. I chose computer security. Then you work in the field forever, and then everybody believes that you are an expert. That's what I've done. You could call me a cybersecurity salaryman. And some of you know that to remind myself of where I'm coming from, I'm always carrying one of these with me. And there are people in the audience who have no idea what this is. This is a 5 1/4-inch floppy. You could think about it as the USB thumb drive of the 1990s. And this particular floppy right here is infected. It's infected with a virus called form.a, one of the viruses I analyzed in 1991 when I started my career. 32 years later, we're still fighting the same problem. It's basically the same problem, but internet changed the geography of this problem. You see, these old viruses required people to travel and carry these floppies with them in order for viruses like Form to go around the world. Today, thanks to the internet, they go around the world in minutes or seconds. That's the thing the internet did. It deleted geography. No distances, no borders, no geography. And that's great, and that's awful. It brings us great upsides and completely new kinds of risks and completely new kinds of crime. So are the upsides bigger than the downside? Yes, they are. If you look at the internet revolution of the last 30 years, clearly we have received more benefits than problems, but the problems are very real. In fact, the world changed more for people like you and me than for some other people, because we live in countries which are fairly safe. Crime rates, internationally looking, are very low in Japan and in my home country of Finland. In Finland, crime rates are very low, corruption is almost non-existent. Same thing over here. That means that when the internet became commonplace, the world became a scarier place for you and me. Because when we go online, then we are not in Japan or in Finland. Then we are online. And as victims of crime, we're as close to criminals as anyone else, anywhere else in the world. So people who were living in more dangerous countries suffered a smaller change. Crime was normal in the real world, and now crime is normal in the online world. But for some countries, this change is much bigger. To illustrate this change, let me play you a clip from the trailer of a movie.
It's never been done before. What's the target? When was the last time you were in Vegas? You want to knock over a casino. 3 casinos? Vegas, huh?
Vegas?
Vegas.
Fantastic. The heist is impossible.
Which movie? Anyone? Ocean's 11. Thank you very much. Ocean's 11, 2001. George Clooney, Matt Damon, and Brad Pitt in this movie create a group of gentlemen criminals who conduct a daring heist into the largest casinos in Las Vegas, MGM Grand and Bellagio. And then they steal tens of millions of dollars in cash from the basement of Bellagio, which has a massive safe where their money is kept. This is what crime looked like in the good old days. Then we jump to today. 2 months ago, we saw the very same casinos, MGM Grand and Bellagio, being again attacked by criminals. This time it wasn't a movie. Now it was real. But the criminals were not trying to conduct a heist to steal cash. And they were not on location in Las Vegas, Nevada. The criminals were in an unknown location, and the money they were targeting was completely virtual. They weren't stealing cash. This is how crime has changed. Geography has disappeared, and companies can be targeted with attackers who never even enter their country. This attack was done by a crime group called Alpha. Alpha is part of the Big Five. Big Five in cybersecurity circles means the largest organized online crime gangs. All of them ransomware gangs. Gangs like Alpha, Lockbit, RansomX, Clop, and Black Pasta. Completely organized crime groups which make massive amounts of money with their attacks. Typically with attacks like this. Shutting down the operations of the largest hotel in the United States, preventing people from getting into their rooms, shutting down the casinos, shutting down the restaurants. MGM Resorts estimates that they lost $100 million in this attack. This is what modern crime looks like. The world has changed for the better, but at the very same time it has changed for the worse. Now, I often have meetings with leadership teams of companies or boards of companies. And one question I often hear is that why would we be attacked? We don't think we are a target. Why would they attack us? And what I often tell these companies is to go to Tor. Go to Tor Hidden Service. Go to one of these leak sites. This is the leak site of Lockbit. And just scroll around. Just look at the victim companies. One thing you realize is that there's a lot of victims. This is just one of the ransomware gangs. There's 200 gangs out there. This is the publicly known victims of that company, the companies they have listed on their leak site. This is not the whole picture. And even then, this list just goes on and on and on and on. Companies of all kinds, of all sizes, from all countries on the planet. Right next to each other, you have a furniture making company from Denmark, then a steel mill from Canada, then a bicycle manufacturer from Japan. Right next to each other. Completely different companies, completely different sizes of these companies, completely different locations. And this opens the eyes of companies that, if it could happen to these, it could happen to us. There's nothing in particular which is protecting us. There's nothing in common with these victims. If they can get hit, we can get hit. And when you look at these victims, it's like somebody would have shot online with a shotgun, hitting random targets. Why are these companies hit? Well, the typical explanation is that they had a vulnerable system. Attackers, like Lockbit, they buy access to vulnerable networks. They do business with initial access brokers, criminals who specialize in gaining access to networks. When they find their way in, they will sell that access to ransomware gangs. And they find their way in with exploits. They have a new exploit. Something like the Move It exploit, which was the big thing this summer. Then they create a tool which will find out if your company is vulnerable for this particular exploit. Then they scan the whole internet. Or let's say the whole IPv4 address space, 4.2 billion IP addresses. And then they have a list of vulnerable machines. Here we have an exploit. Here we scanned all computers. Here's the end result. These machines are vulnerable. And then they look at the networks where these vulnerable machines are. That's potential victims. And then the end result is here. That's why it's like shooting with a shotgun. You end up with different victims from everywhere on the planet. No geography. There is no geography on the internet. And the largest cybercrime gangs have become very powerful because they've made so much money. 5 years ago, I coined a new term. I started speaking about cybercrime unicorns. Unicorn is the term we use for technology startup companies which are valued to be over $1 billion in value. And I started using the same term for these cybercrime gangs, cybercrime unicorns, meaning the most valuable and the richest organized online cybercrime gangs. 5 years ago, this was a little bit of a joke. Now it's not funny anymore. These gangs have become immensely wealthy. Many of these gangs have operated for multiple years. And they've been collecting virtual currencies for multiple years because they deal in Bitcoin, Monero, and Zcash. That's how they collect their ransoms. That's where they keep their wealth. Many of these gangs had tens of thousands of Bitcoins in their wallets 5 years ago. If you had tens of thousands of Bitcoins and you kept them for the last 5 years, you have hundreds of millions of dollars now. That means these gangs can afford to invest into their attacks. These gangs are operated like real-world cybercrime gangs. They have organizations, they pay salaries, they have HR teams recruiting more criminals to join the gangs, they have lawyers, they have business analysts. Now, why would a cybercrime gang need a business analyst? They need a business analyst because for ransomware gangs, the biggest challenge is how do we measure what's the right size for the ransom? How much money should we be asking from this victim? 500,000, 1 million, 10 million, 20 million? What's the right figure? This is a hard question. And the answer is, when they hit your network, the first thing they steal is your financial records and your bookkeeping files. They steal your financial information and they give it to their own business analyst, who goes through your figures and comes out with a number. This company has this much money in the bank, has this much money in short-term loans, has this much publicly traded stocks that they could sell overnight. They could pay us 2,252,000 tomorrow. Let's ask for that. And this completely changes the negotiations victim companies have with these ransomware gangs. It makes a lot of sense. Another thing they're doing is branding. I just mentioned by name some of the largest ransomware gangs, like Lockbit, Alpha, and Clop. These gangs have names. They have websites. They have logos. They have brands. These are criminal groups which are doing branding. They are branding themselves. Why? Because they want you to know about them. You can imagine going to the office Monday morning only to realize that, oh my God, we've been hit by ransomware. And then, to make matters worse, oh my God, it's Lockbit. Oh my God, it's Alpha. Oh my God, it's RansomX. Because people who work in this industry know these gangs by reputation. And the reputation is scary. These are the gangs you don't want to get hit by because you know that they are serious business. You know that these gangs know what they're doing. You know that they've been in the network for quite a while. You know they've been using lateral movement to gain access to all parts of your network. You know they have deleted your backups. You know they've taken copies of your emails and of your document archives. You know they will leak the files if you don't pay. But you also know that if you pay, then they won't leak the files. If you pay, they will give you tools to decrypt your files and recover your operations. You know that if you pay, they will not attack your network again. This is the kind of brand they have. This is the kind of reputation they have. They have a reputation of being criminals, but also being honest criminals. That's why they're doing branding. And it works. Now, we never recommend any victims to pay ransom. But that's really easy to say and much harder to do. Many organizations which ended up paying the ransom were initially against it. Initially they said that no, of course we won't pay money to criminals. That only makes the problem bigger. But then they realize exactly what would be leaked online if they wouldn't pay. It's not just that your patent applications and your financial figures and your future plans are leaked. It's also tons and tons of personal data. Like, for example, emails of your employees exchanging emails with corporate healthcare about private health issues. That would also be leaked online. It's really easy to say, don't pay the ransom. It's much harder to do this in practice. The first ransomware we found, the first ransomware using Bitcoin that we ever found, was found 10 years ago. It was in October 2013, so almost exactly 10 years ago. Back then, ransomware was targeting home users. It wasn't a corporate problem at all. Why home users? Because home computers are really easy to infect. They would infect home computers, then they would encrypt all the photos, and then they would ask you to pay small payment, $100 US, $300 US. That's how the problem started 10 years ago. Over the last 10 years, this problem has completely changed. Now, it's only a corporate problem. All ransomware is targeting companies or organizations. home users are not being targeted by ransomware at all, because there's much more money to be made by targeting companies instead of home users, even though home users are an easier target. Home users today are being targeted by scams. Tech support scams, auction scams, Airbnb scams, romance scams. Most of the problems end users are faced with are not really very technical problems. They might be things like password theft or phishing. But most of the really technical attacks, like gaining access to systems with exploits, are targeting companies and corporate systems. Now, at our company, WithSecure, we collect statistics about malicious internet traffic. And we noticed something peculiar 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we realized that there was now more malicious traffic on the internet coming from Linux computers than from Windows computers. And this was a bit surprising, because we all know that Windows is the problem, right? We all know that all these viruses and worms only run on Windows. We don't see them on Macs or Linuxes or on our phones. It's a Windows problem. And what our statistics was showing us that that's wrong. Windows was number 2. Linux was number 1 in generating malicious traffic on the internet. In a way, this makes a lot of sense. Linux is by far the most common operating system on the planet. Linux runs the infrastructure on all the servers and all the clouds, and of course Android, which is the number 1 mobile phone operating system, runs on Linux kernel. But that's not the real explanation. The real explanation is the explosion in connected devices. I am the father of the Hypponen law, a law which says if it's smart, it's vulnerable. And that's a reference to smart devices. As we add functionality and connectivity to everyday devices, these devices become smart, but at the same time, they also become hackable. My favorite example of this is my watch. This is an Omega Seamaster 300, a mechanical watch which I've been carrying for the last 22 years. This watch has no CPU. This watch runs no code. It has no Bluetooth, has no Wi-Fi. Can you hack my watch? No. You can't, because there's nothing to hack. It doesn't run any code. It's not connected. It's not smart. Many of you in the audience are carrying an Apple Watch or Android Watch or maybe Garmin or Suunto or something else, smartwatches. And many of those are really well built. They really have great security features. But are they completely unhackable? No. Anything a man can build, another man can undo. Anything a programmer has programmed can be exploited by someone else until we figure out a way to write code which has no bugs. And that's not coming anytime soon. So as all the devices we are using are relying on being connected to 2 different networks, the electricity network and the internet network, everything becomes smart and everything becomes connected, which means everything becomes vulnerable. If it's smart, it's vulnerable. If it's programmable, it's hackable. That's what it says basically. That's the Hypponen law. And yes, it is a very, very pessimistic law, but it is also true. And this is also the name of my latest book, If It's Smart, It's Vulnerable, which came out in Japanese now in July. Internet no teki to wa dareka. If it's connected, it is vulnerable. So this Mirai worm here in this word cloud is one of the explanations why Linux traffic overtook Windows traffic when we calculate malicious traffic on the internet. We found the first IoT worms a couple of years ago, and the number one malware, the first one we found, was Mirai. And yes, of course, I know it's Japanese and means the future. And this is the future of malware. More and more of the infected devices online are not traditional computers. They're everything but traditional computers. They're things that we don't think about as computers at all. Linux is one of the common platforms we run on our IoT devices. It's not the only one. There's some other alternatives as well, but especially in the more functional IoT devices, we often see embedded Linux kernels inside. And Mirai is a great example. It's been going around for the last 5 years with very simple techniques. Initially, the only way it found new machines to infect was that it was scanning public IP addresses to find IoT devices like smart TVs or smart doorbells. Then it would try logging on into these devices using Telnet. Yes, Telnet, out of all possible protocols, the 25-year-old, 30-year-old protocol Telnet, using default credentials like admin, root, support, root 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or my favorite, motherfucker. Now, I don't know if there is a device out there where the login is mother and the password is, but it does actually try that. And the end result is that we have a global botnet. Now today, multiple different botnets, all based on these simple mechanics where they are infecting IoT devices instead of computers. Protecting computers is a well-known problem. We know how to do it. We think about it. We don't think about securing our doorbells or fridges or washing machines or security cameras or home routers. And some of the largest denial of service attacks we see today are being launched from botnets like these. That's what they are using instead of using traditional computers. And slowly but surely everything is going online. When we scan public IP ranges, we find things like these. That's a factory somewhere in Italy. Exposed online, they had an open VNC, no username, no password. Anybody could log on and start controlling this system. Then we found this. That's a medical system. That's a medical system where every single one of these is one hospital bed. That's patient data. That's vital information from the patient. I have a neighbor, she's a doctor. I showed this picture to her and she said that this guy is not doing very well. And that's exposed online. Then we found this. That's an X-ray system with X-ray images exposed online. I used to think that my job is to secure computers. I am a computer security guy. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing all my life. And I used to think that my job is to secure computers. Slowly but surely I realized that that's not my job. And it's not your job either. Our job, those of us who work in cybersecurity, our job is not to secure computers. Our job is to secure the society. Because the whole society runs on computers. Everything runs on computers. And that's a pretty big responsibility to be put on us But that's what we're doing. And it affects everything. You look at modern cars. What are cars today? Cars are data centers on 4 wheels. That's what they are. How many chips, how many CPUs, how many sensors, how many different connectivity kits? We are adding connectivity and functionality into everything, including our critical infrastructure. The last big technology revolution before the internet was electricity. Electricity became commonplace around 150 years ago. And today, of course, electricity is completely mandatory. When electricity started becoming a thing, we had 2 billion people on the planet. 2 billion. Today, we have 8 billion. If we would somehow lose electricity, let's imagine a solar storm which would shut down electric grid for 20 years, something drastic like that, it's quite obvious that we couldn't feed 8 billion people without electricity. That's how critical it has become in only 150 years. And that's exactly the same thing as we are right now doing with connectivity. Our great-great-grandfathers and mothers embraced electricity. As an end result, we got huge amounts of benefits, but now we are completely reliant on electricity. Our great-great-grandkids will be exactly as reliant on connectivity. Today, in 2023, if internet goes down, it doesn't shut down our society. It's very bad, it's very expensive, it's very painful if there's an internet outage, but it doesn't shut down our society completely, not yet. But in 10, 15, 20 years, it will. In fact, eventually, a cut in internet connectivity is going to cut power. Now, today, it's of course the other way around. If we lose electricity, routers don't work. Without electricity, we'll lose internet as well. What I'm saying is eventually it's going to be the other way around. Eventually, all the devices everywhere will assume they have connectivity, and when they don't, things start failing in surprising ways, including that we will lose electricity if there's no connectivity. Right now, it sounds insane, but it's going to happen. And when it happens, remember, Mikko said it. And if it never happens, then never mind. So internet deleted geography. That's the biggest change we've seen so far during our generations. But I believe we have an even bigger revolution ahead of us. And you know what it is. It is the artificial intelligence revolution. And just like internet changed everything, AI will change everything. And just like the companies that ignored the internet 30 years ago, they didn't have a very good future ahead of them. Exactly in the same way today, the companies that ignore AI, they won't have a future either. And there are very clear implications for us who work in cybersecurity coming out of AI and machine learning. Let me play you a video clip.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Mikko, and I hunt hackers. Thank you all for joining our conference today. It's great to see you all. Greetings, everyone. My name is Mikko, and I hunt hackers. Thank you all for joining our conference today. It's great to see you all.
Here on the left side, that's Laura Kankala, Threat Intel Lead for F-Secure, and on the right side, That's Mikko, Chief Research Officer for WithSecure. LoRa is real. Mikko is not. And we've all seen deep fakes. Yes, it's a deep fake. There's nothing new here, except this is the level of homemade deepfakes today. This video was done by a friend of mine on one home computer with one NVIDIA GPU. And the end result is so good that I can't tell that it's not Mikko, and I am Mikko. That's where we are today. And we are seeing surprisingly good examples of what AI can do, how it can generate text or images or anything else. And the thing I've been wondering about a lot is, why now? Why is this happening in 2023? Because we've been waiting for this for decades. In fact, the very first time I read about artificial intelligence was when I read this magazine. This is a Finnish popular science magazine called Tekniikan maailma, the world of technology. That's what it means. And this issue is from April 1983. I was 13 years old when I read this magazine. And this magazine has 8 pages about the future of machine learning. And in this magazine, they forecast the future where we will one day have all human knowledge available as data instead of paper. And we can store it all in these massively large storage systems, and we can use it to teach machine learning systems. And these systems will become as smart as humans. That's what they wrote 40 years ago. We've been waiting for this for 40 years. So why now? Well, the first revolution that we needed for this to happen right now was the internet revolution, because internet revolution converted all knowledge into data. Before the internet, if you wanted to read a book, the only choice you had was a paper book. Today, you can read this as an e-book or an audiobook. In fact, you can read this 40-year-old magazine online as a PDF. So we've converted all the data we generate into data, and we've gone back and converted all the old knowledge into data as well. You can't use paper for machine learning, it has to be data, but we've done that now. And we can store it all thanks to the cloud. And then the third revolution, the most important, the revolution of power, computing power. Some of you in the audience have an iPhone 15 in your pockets. iPhone 15 uses 3 nanometer technology, and that's magic. The way these chips are done is magic. The way they're done in factories involves taking tiny droplets of tin, suspending that in mid-air, shooting that droplet with lasers, converting it into plasma, and then using that plasma as a lens so it will condense light narrow enough so it fits through 3 nanometer openings, so we can burn drawings of CPUs and GPUs on silicon die. And this is the hardest thing to do in the world. It's easier to put a man on the moon than to build one of these chips. And there's plenty of us in this room carrying these chips in our pockets like nothing. This is so hard to do. There's only very, very few parties in the world which can do it at all. And the end result is that 20 years ago, this would have been one of the fastest computers in the world. There's a list of the fastest supercomputers in the world. It's called the top 500 list. Right now, the fastest supercomputer in the world is in USA. Number 2 is here in Japan. Number 3 is in Finland, a joint EU supercomputer. I've actually seen that computer. It's called Lumi, which means snow. And it's the size of 2 full-sized trucks. The excess heat coming out of that supercomputer is used to heat up a small town. And it runs its own power generators. That's what supercomputers are like. And this, just 20 years ago, would have been one of the fastest supercomputers in the world. And now everybody has one of these in their pockets. And it doesn't cost hundreds of millions of euros. And it doesn't need a generator. It runs on a battery. On a goddamn battery. It's crazy how fast these have become. And the end result is we can now take all human knowledge and train it on these machines. And we end up with generative AI. Generative AI. What does the generative really mean here? Well, it means that it can generate content. You take content like text and you use machine learning to teach it to an algorithm, and now the algorithm can generate text. You take spoken language, speech, and it can learn that. It can learn to recognize and generate speech. You take images, and it can generate images. And then you can start combining these technologies. Let's say you take photos of me. These are real photos taken by photographers. And then you take photos of Barbie and Ken. And then you ask the algorithm to combine what it has seen. And you end up with, guess what? Mikko as Ken. That's pretty neat. And that's not a filter. It's not a filter put on an existing photo. It's a completely new picture from a different angle. I don't have clothes like that. I have something like that. And it can generate this because it's a generative algorithm. This is great and this is awful. Why is it awful? Because it enables things like this. This is a deepfake video of Elon Musk posted on Twitter 3 months ago.
Hi. My friend got an idea of cryptocurrency exchange, and now he's product entering the world market on June 7th. He offers the best conditions on the market and an opportunity to get some crypto for free. It's your chance. Go to bitrelex.com and get your bonus.
Do not go to bitrelex.com. It's a scam. But it does look like Elon Musk. It does sound like Elon Musk. It's not Elon Musk. Or this guy. Mr. Beast, the second most popular YouTuber in the world. Let's hear what he has to say.
If you're watching this video, you're one of the 10,000 lucky people who'll get an iPhone 15 Pro for just $2. I'm Mr. Beast, and I'm doing the world's largest iPhone 15 giveaway. Click the link below to claim yours now.
Sounds like a good deal, huh? iPhone 15 for $2. Nice guy. And it's a deep fake. Don't click the link. And we will see more problems like this. The problem hasn't exploded yet. These 2 videos are the only examples I can show you. These are the only 2 cases I know where criminals have used deepfakes in scams to make money. We have seen political use of deepfakes and some other examples. But what I'm saying is that this problem hasn't exploded yet, but it will. Very soon we will see real-time deepfakes, which means your financial people inside your organization will one day get a Teams or Zoom call from the CFO asking to pay bills or to change account numbers of existing clients. And it looks like the CFO, it sounds like the CFO, but it's not the CFO. We haven't seen this yet. There's some reports of this happening already, but none of that has been proven. But that's not really the point. It will happen. We have the technology. We can use these technologies for good. We can use them for bad. In April, we found the very first worm which was using OpenAI's GPT through an API to rewrite its code every time it replicated. So a worm which has English language descriptions for every function inside the worm, and then it calls OpenAI and asks OpenAI to write code for these functions. And that code is what it copies to files it infects, which means it looks completely different every time it replicates. So what's going to happen next? Well, next we will find completely automated malware campaigns. Malware campaigns which are not being run by humans, but by machines. Complete automation. Defenders already use automation, which means defenders react very quickly. Today, defenders react quickly, attackers react slowly. And this will change. And then we will have bad AI against good AI. This could have happened already, but it hasn't. We know it hasn't because the attackers are still slow today. But there's no reason why this couldn't change tomorrow. It's going to change within the upcoming months. And then we will see which one will be faster, good AI or bad AI. So I often speak about cybersecurity Tetris as an example or an illustration of what it really means to be trying to defend our systems. We all know the game Tetris. We all know what we are supposed to do. What you're trying to do is to make a whole line. That's the target. Well, actually, the target is to make 4 whole lines at the same time. That's a Tetris. What happens when you succeed? Well, the line you made disappears. And that's what we do in cybersecurity. Our success and our successes are invisible. Nobody sees them. But our failures pile up. Just like in game of Tetris, no one sees how many lines you've cleared. They only see your failures. And there's nothing we can do to change that. We are playing cybersecurity Tetris, and we will be playing it in the future as well. Thank you very much.